Dr. Ji Woo pressed her gloved hand against the cold stone wall of the ancient temple. Her breath fogged up inside her helmet as she stared at the symbols carved deep into the alien rock. She had been studying these markings for 3 days now, and each translation made her stomach twist with worry. "Captain Minho, please come to the dig site. I found something important." She spoke into her communication device. The ruins on planet Kepler 442b were old, very old, maybe millions of years old. But what scared Jiwoo was not their age. It was the message they contained. The same message she found on 17 other dead worlds. Captain Minho walked carefully through the broken doorway of the temple. His heavy boots crunched on the strange purple sand that covered everything on this planet. Behind him came Lieutenant Jae-sung and Engineer Bo-young. Their faces looked serious through their helmet glass. "What did you find, Doctor?" Minho asked. Ji-woo pointed to her scanner screen. The device had worked hard to understand the alien writing, comparing it to thousands of other languages in its memory. The translation glowed in bright blue letters. "It says the same thing we found on all the other worlds. The Creator has departed. The Maker is gone. The Divine One has left us alone." Her voice shook as she spoke. "Every single dead civilization we have found has the same message." Bo-young stepped closer to look at the symbols. "But what does it mean? Who is this Creator?" "I think," Ji-woo said slowly, "it means the being that helped create life in our galaxy, the one that guided evolution, the one that gave intelligence to different species. And according to these ruins, it left long ago. At that exact moment, something incredible happened. Every living mind in the galaxy felt the same thing at the same time. It started as a warm feeling in the back of their thoughts. Then it grew stronger, much stronger. On Earth, Admiral Hygiene was drinking coffee in her office when the presence filled her mind. The hot liquid spilled across her desk as her hands began to shake. On trade ships traveling between stars, alien crews stopped their work and looked up at nothing, feeling something they had never felt before. The presence spoke to every conscious being at once. Its voice was not angry or sad. It was calm, like a parent talking to a grown child. "My work here is complete. You are now free to write your own destiny." Then, as quickly as it had come, the presence vanished. The galaxy fell silent. Back on Kepler 442b, the human team stood frozen in shock. They had just experienced something that would change everything forever. "Did everyone feel that?" whispered Jisung. "The whole galaxy felt it," Minho replied. Every living thing just heard the same message. Jiwoo looked down at her scanner. New signals were appearing on the screen. Emergency broadcasts from across known space. The device translated them automatically. Zephyrian Collective requesting immediate assistance. Government collapse imminent. Vort-hack crystal cities have gone silent. No response to communications. Nautiloid homeworld in chaos. Population retreating to deep ocean. More and more distress signals filled the scanner. Hundreds of them, then thousands. "Captain," Bo-young said quietly, "I think we just watched every other civilization in the galaxy fall apart." Minho activated his long-range communicator. "This is Captain Minho of the Earth research vessel New Dawn. Priority message for Earth Command. We have a galaxy-wide emergency." The response came quickly. Admiral Hygiene's voice crackled through space. "Captain, we are receiving distress calls from everywhere. What is your status?" "We are safe, Admiral. But I think we need to understand what just happened. Every alien species seems to have lost something they depended on, something they needed to function. And humans?" Hygiene asked. Minho looked around at his team. They were scared, yes, but they were still working, still thinking, still making decisions. "We seem to be fine, Admiral. Different somehow." Jiwoo suddenly understood. "Captain, I think I know why we're different. Humans never had direct contact with this creator being. We learned to make our own choices long ago. We built our own governments, wrote our own laws, made our own mistakes. Other species had help, guidance from above. They never learned to be truly independent. So when their guide left," Jae-sung added, "they forgot how to guide themselves." The communication device buzzed with another message from Earth. All ships, return to human space immediately. We're organizing a galaxy-wide aid mission. It looks like we just became the only stable civilization left. Minho took one last look at the ancient temple. The dead civilization that built it had received the same message long ago. They had not survived losing their creator. But maybe, just maybe, the current galaxy would be different. Maybe this time, someone would be there to help. Pack everything up, he ordered his team. We have work to do. As their ship lifted off from the dead world, Jiwoo watched the ruins grow smaller through the window. Somewhere out there, billions of frightened beings were learning what it meant to be truly alone for the first time. But they would not stay alone. Humanity would make sure of that. The age of divine guidance was over. The age of self-determination had begun. 3 months had passed since the Creator's departure, and the galaxy was falling apart. Ambassador Sumin stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking down at what used to be the beautiful capital city of the Zephyrian homeworld. Now it was nothing but broken buildings and smoke rising into the purple sky. The fighting started 2 weeks after the silence, explained Elder Zontalk through his translation device. The tall, bird-like alien moved slowly, his bright feathers now dull and dirty. Some of us believe the Creator will return. Others think we must learn to live without divine guidance. The 2 groups cannot agree, so they fight. Somin nodded sadly. This was the same story on every world she had visited. Species that had lived peacefully for thousands of years were now at war with themselves. They had no idea how to make decisions without their cosmic guide. Elder Zontalk, she said gently, humans learned to govern themselves long ago. We can teach you. We can help. The alien's large eyes blinked slowly. Your species is strange, Ambassador. You do not seem lost without the Creator's voice. How is this possible? Because we never heard it directly. Somin explained. We had to figure out right from wrong on our own. We made many mistakes, but we learned from them. We built systems where people could vote, where leaders had to answer to the citizens, where laws could be changed when they no longer worked. On the medical ship Healing Light, Captain Donghyun was dealing with a different crisis. His ship was full of nautiloid refugees. The fish-like beings had always lived in the shallow waters of their ocean world, but after the Creator left, they became so scared that they swam down to the deepest, darkest parts of their seas. They almost died down there, Dr. Unji reported to the captain. The pressure was too much for their bodies, but they were too frightened to come back up. They told me the surface world felt empty and meaningless without their God's presence. Donghyun looked through the window at the nautiloid families floating in the ship's water-filled chambers. The adults moved slowly, their eyes blank and hopeless. But the children seemed more curious, pressing their faces against the glass to watch the human crew work. Doctor, I have an idea, he said. What if we start with the young ones? They might be more willing to learn new ways of thinking. Meanwhile, in the crystal cities of the Vorthak homeworld, engineer Seung was trying to understand why an entire civilization had simply stopped functioning. The beautiful crystal beings had built their society like a perfect machine. Every action, every decision had been guided by what they believed were divine mathematical formulas. They cannot compute without absolute certainty, she explained to Captain Eugene over the communication system. Their whole culture is based on having perfect information from their Creator. Now they just sit there, unable to process any decision because they are not 100% sure it is correct. Can we help them? Eugene asked. I think so. I am working with their scientists to show them that uncertainty is not dangerous, that you can make good decisions even when you do not have all the answers. It is slow work, but some of them are starting to understand. Back on Earth, Admiral Hygiene was coordinating the largest rescue operation in human history. Her headquarters buzzed with activity as officers planned missions to dozens of different worlds. Status report, she called out as she entered the main command room. Lieutenant Jae-sung looked up from his screen. Admiral, we have 23 ships providing medical aid, 15 diplomatic missions attempting to establish new governments, and 47 cargo ships carrying food and supplies to worlds where society has collapsed completely. What about the autonomous governance protocols? The legal team has finished adapting them for 12 different species so far. Ambassador So-Min reports good progress with the Zephyrians. Captain Eugene says the Vorthak are beginning to accept the concept of probability-based decision-making. And Captain Dong-hyun has successfully established the first Nautiloid Youth Council. Hygiene smiled. Good. What about resistance? Jae-sung's expression became more serious. Some groups are not happy with our involvement. Admiral, the hegemony of pure thought, has issued several warnings. They claim that only species who receive direct divine communication should guide the galaxy. They see our help as interference. Let them complain. Hygiene said firmly, we are not trying to control anyone. We are teaching them to control themselves. On a trade station in the Outer Rim, Dr. Min Young was conducting her most important experiment yet. She had gathered representatives from 6 different species to participate in the first intergalactic democracy workshop. The key, she explained to the mixed group of aliens, is that everyone gets a voice, but no one gets everything they want. You must learn to compromise, to find solutions that work for the majority while protecting the rights of the minority. A young Zephyrian raised his wing. But how do we know if our decisions are correct without divine approval? You test them, replied a Vorthak crystalline being who had been learning human concepts for weeks. You observe the results, and if they do not work, you try something different. Dr. Min-young felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could learn to govern itself. It would take time, patience, and a lot of work. But for the first time since the Creator's departure, she believed it was possible. The Great Abandonment was ending. The age of self-governance was beginning. The diplomatic vessel Harmony's voice moved slowly through the floating rocks that surrounded the Vorthak colony. Captain Eugene watched from the bridge as his crew worked to make contact with the crystal beings who had not spoken to anyone in 4 months. Any progress today, Commander Taeho? Eugene asked the second in command. A little. Engineer Su-young found a way to connect her computer to their crystal network. They are listening to us now, but they still cannot understand how to make choices without being completely sure they are right. In the colony's main chamber, Dr. Min-young sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by tall crystal beings that looked like living diamonds. Their bodies glowed softly with different colors, but the light was much dimmer than it should be. They were sick from not being able to make decisions. Let me show you something, Min-young said, holding up her tablet computer. This is a math problem. What is 2 plus 2? The crystals began to glow brighter. Their harmonic voices filled the room. 4. The answer is 4. This is certain. This is correct. Good. Now, what is the best way to organize a government? The glow immediately faded. The crystals became silent. There is no single correct answer, whispered one of them finally. Without the Creator's guidance, we cannot compute the perfect solution. Min-young smiled gently. But what if there is no perfect solution? What if many different answers can all be good? A young crystal being near the back of the group flickered with curiosity. This is impossible. Mathematics teaches us that problems are correct answers. Not always, said junior technician Bo-young, who had been quietly working on her own tablet. She was the youngest member of the crew, barely out of the academy. But she had an idea that might help. Look, Bo-young said, projecting a hologram into the air. Here's an experiment. I drop this ball. Where will it land? The crystals studied the hologram carefully. We need more information. Wind speed, gravity strength, air pressure. Without complete data, we cannot predict the exact location. Exactly. But can you tell me the general area where it might land? The crystals began to glow again, but this time with a different quality of light. Yes, it will land somewhere in this circle. The probability is high, but not perfect. And that is enough to make useful decisions, Bo-young explained. Your government can work the same way. You test ideas, you observe what happens, and you adjust based on the results, like a scientific experiment. For the first time since the Creator left, the crystal beings began to resonate with something that sounded like hope. Meanwhile, on the ocean world of Nautilus Prime, Lieutenant Commander Woojin was underwater in a special diving suit, working with the aquatic nautiloids in their deepest city. The fish-like beings had built their homes in an underwater canyon, far from the surface they now feared. "Today we are going to hold our first election," Wu Jin announced through his underwater speaker. The translation device turned his words into the clicking and whistling sounds that nautiloids understood. Elder Cloneth, an old nautiloid with silver scales, swam nervously around the gathering circle. "But how do we know we will choose correctly? What if we pick the wrong leader?" "Then you choose a different one next time," replied a young nautiloid named Blue Wex. She had been working with the human teachers for weeks and was beginning to understand their ideas. The human called Wu Jin explained that leaders serve the people, not rule them. If they do not serve well, we can change them. The election took place in the deepest part of their city, but it was still closer to the surface than they had ventured since the silence began. As the nautiloids cast their votes using glowing coral pieces, Wu Jin felt proud of their progress. Back on the Zephyrian homeworld, the civil war was finally ending. Ambassador So Min stood in what had once been a battlefield, watching his former enemies work together to rebuild their damaged city. "The peace talks were successful," reported Captain Minho over the communication system. "Both sides have agreed to form a joint council. Half the members will be chosen by the returners, who still hope the Creator comes back. The other half will be chosen by the progressives, who want to build their own future. And they can work together?" So Min asked. "They are learning. It helps that both sides want the same basic things: safety, food, homes for their families. They just disagreed about how to achieve these goals." A young Zephyrian approached Somin. His bright blue feathers were marked with scars from the fighting. "Ambassador, I was a soldier in the war. I fought because I thought my side had the only correct answer. But now I see that both sides had good ideas. Is it possible for two different answers to both be right?" Somin nodded. "Yes, it is. That is the beauty of democracy. Different viewpoints can exist together, and the best solutions often come from combining different ideas." 3 months later, representatives from all the recovering worlds gathered on the space station New Hope. Dr. Minyoung watched as Vorthac crystals stood next to nautiloid water tanks, while Zephyrians perched beside human diplomats. 6 months ago, most of you could not make a single decision without divine guidance," she addressed the assembly. "Today, you are here as elected representatives of your people. You have learned that the best laws are not handed down from above, but built up from below, by free beings working together. The galaxy was learning to govern itself, one world at a time. The attack came without any warning. Admiral Dawn was drinking her morning coffee on the diplomatic station Unity's Promise, when suddenly her mind exploded with pain. She dropped her cup and grabbed her head as alien thoughts forced their way into her brain like sharp knives. "You dare change the cosmic order?" A powerful voice screamed inside her skull. Only those who spoke directly with the Creator should guide the lesser species. All around the station, humans and aliens alike fell to their knees. The pain was terrible. It felt like someone was ripping through their memories, looking at their most private thoughts without permission. On the bridge, Captain Junho tried to reach his control panel, but his hands were shaking too much. His crew was in even worse condition. Ensign Nayang had collapsed at her station, blood running from her nose as the psychic attack grew stronger. This is a hierophant of the hegemony of pure thought. The voice continued in everyone's mind. "We have watched your interference with disgust. You teach chaos where there should be order. You give choice to those who should obey. This ends now." Through the station's windows, Deun could see the enemy ships approaching. They moved in perfect formation, like dancers following music only they could hear. These were the ships of the hegemony, an ancient alliance of species that could read minds and speak without words. "Activate emergency protocols." Deun shouted, fighting against the pain in her head. "Send a distress signal to the human fleet." But even as she spoke, she knew it might be too late. The hegemony had been planning this attack for months. They had waited for the perfect moment when humans were scattered across the galaxy, helping other species build new governments. On the defense frigate Ironwill, Captain Junho was struggling to keep his ship working. Half his crew could not even stand up because of the psychic attack. The enemy could read their thoughts and know their battle plans before they even made them. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Sukjin called out from his station. I have an idea. Remember the mind wall protocol that Dr. Young-Soo developed? Junho tried to focus through the mental noise. The privacy shields? But those were just theoretical. Not anymore. I have been working on them for weeks. The idea is based on human concepts of individual thinking and mental privacy. Most alien species share their thoughts naturally, but humans learn to keep our minds separate. Maybe we can use that. Do it, Junho ordered. Suk Jin's fingers flew over his controls, activating a system that had never been tested in real combat. Suddenly, the screaming voices in everyone's heads became quieter. The pain was still there, but it was bearable now. It is working, Na-young shouted from her station. The psychic intrusion is being blocked. The battle that followed was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The hegemony ships moved with perfect coordination because their crews shared one mind. But the human ships fought with something the Ancient Alliance had never faced: the stubborn independence of people who had always made their own choices. Dr. Young-Soo, the fleet's chief expert on alien minds, was studying the enemy's behavior from his research ship. Captain Junho, I think I understand their weakness, he transmitted to the battle fleet. Their power comes from absolute certainty. They believe they are completely right about everything. But every time we make them doubt themselves, their psychic connection gets weaker. How do we make them doubt? Junho asked while dodging enemy fire. By showing them our human emotions: fear, uncertainty, hope, confusion. These feelings are poison to minds that expect perfect order. Commander Hae-won, piloting her fighter craft through the enemy formation, had an idea. Instead of trying to hide her thoughts, she did something crazy. She opened her mind completely and broadcast her feelings to the enemy telepaths. She showed them her fear of dying in space, her worry about her family back on Earth, her uncertainty about whether humanity was doing the right thing by interfering in galactic politics, her hope that maybe different species could learn to work together despite their differences. The effect was immediate and shocking. The hegemony formation began to break apart. Their ships started flying in different directions as their crews struggled to process emotions they had never experienced. Impossible! The Hierophant's voice echoed weakly in everyone's minds. How can you function with so much uncertainty? How can you make decisions when you are not sure you are correct? Because being unsure does not mean being wrong, Hae-won replied, her thoughts now reaching across the entire battle area. It means being honest about what we do not know. And when we are honest about our doubts, we can work together to find better answers. More human pilots began to follow Hae-won's example. They broadcast their fears, their hopes, their questions, and their dreams. The hegemony ships began to slow down as their crews became overwhelmed by the flood of new emotions. Retreat! The Hierophant finally commanded his forces. We must regroup and consider this new information. As the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace, the humans began to help the wounded on both sides. Even in victory, they offered medical aid to their attackers. Sir, Na-young reported to Captain Junho, we are receiving a message from one of the retreating hegemony ships. On the screen appeared a face unlike anything they had seen before. It was ancient, powerful, but now it looked confused and tired. I am Keth Moore, former second to the Hierophant. Your emotions, they have shown us things we never considered. Perhaps we have been wrong about the nature of strength. 8 months had passed since the great battle with the hegemony of pure thought. Now, at the center of the galaxy, the largest construction project in known history was finally complete. The space station New Beginning floated like a small moon among the stars, built by the hands and minds of 17 different species working together. Dr. Jiwoo stood in the Central Assembly Hall, watching as representatives from across the galaxy found their seats. The room was a marvel of engineering. Zephyrian delegates perched on high branches designed for their bird-like bodies. Nautiloid representatives floated in clear water tanks that allowed them to participate while staying comfortable. Vorthack crystal beings stood in specially designed holders that helped amplify their harmonic voices. This is incredible, whispered Engineer Boyoung, now promoted to Chief Cultural Liaison. 6 months ago, most of these species could barely make simple decisions. Now, they are here to sign the most important treaty in galactic history. President In-Ho of the Terran Coalition stepped forward to address the assembly. His voice was calm but strong, carrying easily through the translation systems that turned his words into clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, and dozens of other forms of communication. "Friends and allies," he began, "today we signed the Galactic Compact. This is not just a treaty between governments. It is our promise to build a future together, without kings or gods telling us what to do, but with the free choice of beings who decided to work as one." In the back of the hall, a figure that would have been impossible to imagine just months ago slowly approached the human delegation. Keth Moore, the former second-in-command of the hegemony, no longer carried himself with the arrogant certainty of his old role. His ancient face showed something new: humility. "President In-Ho," he said, his mental voice now gentle rather than commanding, "I must speak before the signing begins." The hall fell silent. Everyone remembered the terrible battle, the psychic attacks, the fear and pain, but they also remembered how it ended, with understanding rather than destruction. "For 10,000 years, Keth Moore continued, my people believed that only those who heard the Creator's voice directly should guide others. We thought strength came from never doubting, never questioning, never showing weakness. Your species taught us something we never imagined possible." He paused, and when he spoke again, his words reached every mind in the hall through gentle telepathy rather than force. "You showed us that true strength comes not from imposed order, but from chosen cooperation. You taught us that admitting uncertainty is not weakness, but honesty. You proved that the best decisions come not from one perfect mind, but from many different minds working together." Admiral Hygiene, now serving as Earth's senior diplomat, stepped forward. "Keth Moore, what is your request?" "We withdraw all claims of superiority. We ask not to rule, but to participate. We request equal representation in this new government, the same as any other species. We want to learn what it means to be part of something greater than ourselves." A murmur of surprise ran through the assembly. Captain Minho, who had been present at the very first discovery of the Creator's message, felt his heart race. This was the moment that would decide whether the galaxy would truly unite or fall back into old patterns of domination. Young Blue Wex, the nautiloid who had been among the first to understand human concepts of democracy, raised a fin to speak. "The humans taught us that everyone deserves a voice, even those who once opposed us. If Keth Moore's people are willing to participate as equals rather than rulers, then they should be welcome." The vote that followed was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Species after species agreed to accept the former hegemony members as equal partners in the new galactic government. As the signing ceremony began, Dr. Min-Young watched with tears in her eyes. Each representative came forward to place their mark on the compact, using methods appropriate to their biology. Some signed with hands, others with tentacles, claws, or crystal formations that left glowing impressions in the document. The last signature belonged to Captain Minho, representing Earth's Exploration and Research Division. As he finished writing his name, he looked up at the assembled delegates. "The Creator was right," he said simply. "We were ready to write our own laws. All of us, working together." Through the station's massive windows, ships from dozens of worlds waited in peaceful formation. They were not there because some god or emperor had commanded it. They were there because their crews had chosen to be part of something larger than their individual worlds. Lieutenant Commander Wu Jin, monitoring communications from the station's command center, smiled as he listened to the chatter between the different fleets. Zephyrians were sharing navigation data with Vorthack mathematicians. Nautiloid engineers were teaching human technicians new ways to process water on long space journeys. Former hegemony telepaths were helping everyone communicate more clearly. "Commander," his assistant reported, "we are receiving celebration messages from over 300 worlds. The news of the compact signing is spreading faster than our official communications." "Good," Wu Jin replied. "Let them celebrate. They have earned it." As the ceremony ended and delegates began to mingle, talking and learning from each other, the galaxy settled into its new reality. For the first time in cosmic history, the future belonged entirely to those who would live in it. No divine mandate guided their choices. No ancient authority told them what to do. They were free, and they had chosen to be free together.